To start with, there are some documents that are essential that you need to have access to, whether you download them or put them on your iPad or whatever you do. As usual, we have the women's gymnastics rules modification document, and it includes meet procedures as well. What's different this year is this is the third version since October. So if you've downloaded it already, you do need to download the latest version, which has a date on it of December the 6th. The other thing that's different this year is some of the materials that were in the back of the rules modification have been put into a supplemental document. And that is available on our website as well. And then, of course, as always, Crystal's rules news come out every 2 weeks. And be sure and review those to make sure that you're up to date with any changes or interpretations. And I've got a list of other important resources, and they're all on our website. But if you go to the NCAA section, you'll see there's 3 categories: rules and clarifications, the collegiate review videos, and the judging resources. What you will find there are the college practice judging videos for 22-23. They have scores, start value, and if there was an up to a level or another composition deduction, that's included. There's also on-site review videos that are available on that same page. And those are the videos that are not scored. They're intended for you and your other members of your judging panel at each meet to review the current rules for college gymnastics. We realized that it's really hard for us to get the rules out of our head that we use every weekend for hundreds and hundreds of gymnasts, meaning the age group rules. Then we go to do a college meet, and we need a refresher on what those rule changes are for the college program. So these videos are for you and your partner to go through, judge on site, and make sure that you point out any of the exceptions for the collegiate program. A typical one is the +1 bonus for having a single bar release move. It's meant as a visual aid to the conversation you were already supposed to have. We also have a list of considerations for when you might give a yellow card. This came about because some judges said they really didn't know what was considered to be kind of over the edge. So we put together some examples that might trigger a yellow card. There are also some examples of how to notate execution deductions, and those will be helpful for you in doing routine summaries. We've created for each event this year a 10-minute rules review. This is based on our clinics, but we just took the part that described the rules and condensed it down to 10 minutes or less. That could be helpful for you to review before you go to judge your event, or even to listen to, not watch, on your way to a meet. The rules review clinic for coaches, I mentioned to those of you who were on earlier, Linda Thorberg and Lois Colburn did that, and it really is just a terrific video. It's one that was done just for the coaches to help them understand the USAG rules and make sure that they were familiar with some of the college rule changes as well. And then we have all the college clinics up, and then go back also to last year when we did the landings project and the project on balance errors. Really want you to review those. We didn't have time to review them in the clinics, but please go back and review those. The coaches worked with us on that. They spent a lot of time working with judges who spent a lot of time doing that. The intent was to standardize these deductions so that all of us knew what a 2/10 deduction looked like for a landing error or for a balance error. And the videos do a great job of that. What happened, though, is not everybody either saw the videos or they did not actually apply those standardized deductions. And so there was some inconsistency in landing deductions across the country, and that popped up in the evaluations from the coaches. And the comment was typically something like, I don't know why we put all that work and effort into doing those videos, and then they don't use the deductions. So even though you may be hesitant to use some of those deductions that are a little bit more severe, if those deductions are on those videos as an example, have the confidence to know that you'll be backed up if you apply those deductions appropriately. There's many other resources on there. Thanks to everybody who's contributed their resources, and to Brenda and to Judy Dobransky, who work with us on getting the videos done. All right, Lois, I'm going to turn it over to you, and she is going to provide an overview of general procedures and changes.
Well, most of you know by now that the written exam is on the JAS site, and Cookie has put up a slide here so you can see where it shows up. So it says collegiate practice exam. The deadline for completion, I've extended it to the end of December. It's open book, pass, fail. You need to score an 80 to pass, but you can do it as many times as you need. Nobody can see your score. These are some general changes that have happened this year. And the first one is simply a reminder that for special requirements and compositional deductions, we use only the modifications. We don't take any special requirement rules or compositional rules from the age group program. This is something new. When an injury occurs, the judges, coaches, and athletic trainer may add additional time, up to 2 minutes, to assess the injury if it is deemed necessary. When the athlete is deemed able to resume their routine, the 45-second fall time for that routine will begin after the injury assessment has concluded. So this is new and it's slightly different from age group. The next one is an age group rule, so you would have heard it this summer, is if a gymnast falls from the bars, they're allowed to get back up with a squat on without a deduction for an extra squat on. Now, the next things are procedure changes. Some of them came from suggestions from NAWJ, and others came from the Coaches Association. This is probably the most important change, or the one the judges like the best. If a score is changed during an inquiry, and that's a regular inquiry or a video inquiry, or during a video review, the skill or connection under review is subject to additional deductions for incompletion or rhythm. It seemed like around the country this was handled differently. So now we have an interpretation on it, and you can take incompletion of the element or rhythm of the element.
We could only do that if we raised an element from, say, a C to a D, because we looked at the video and we saw that even though she was short and didn't make it all the way around for whatever degree requirement she was trying to make, if you would have given her, say, the higher level skill in the meet, you would have taken, say, a tenth or a half a tenth for incomplete. That's the deduction you can take. So you'll note that it did have 2 restrictions that you can only take for incompletion or for rhythm. And that's for the rhythm of the combination. So maybe you had a connection that you broke in the meet, but now that you look at it on video, you decide that I could have given that, but if I did, I would have taken a rhythm deduction. So it can't be an amplitude deduction. It needs to either be the incompletion of the twist or turn or the connection that you connected or not connected.
The rest of these procedures were part of what's called the consent package that came from the coaches. The first one doesn't really relate to us, but I think it's important that you know in case you happen to walk in the gym and hear it happening. They're not going to wait for the score sheets to be signed before they announce the unofficial results at the meet. Obviously, that's to help out the audience, so the audience isn't sitting around waiting to hear what happened. So once the judges have flashed their last scores and it's put into the scoring system, they will do the announcements while we're in the other room doing routine summaries and checking score sheets. This was something that had been suggested both from our group and from the coaches, is that judges' evaluations should also be done on the regional and national NCAA championships. So this is going to be added to the evaluation system. And this came from a proposal from some of the judges, or at least part of it did, is judges who only did 1 or 2 or 3 meets said, it'd be really nice if we stayed on the same event. So the Coach Association also added that judges who are within their first 2 years of judging for NCAA could also stay on 1 or 2 events. Now, it's going to be up to the regional assigners to do this, and it's going to be tricky because there are other requirements like not having 2 people from the same state on an event. But to the best of their ability, they're going to try to help out new judges and judges that don't have many college meets. This was a proposal that came from the Judges Association. There were concerns that the judges' names and where they would be was public knowledge on the Road to National site. So this has been changed. Judges' names won't show up prior to the meet, They will be listed in the administrative section, but the public can't see that. And then when the score sheets are posted on the Road to National site, then the names are on the score sheet. There's no deduction for a gymnast pulling down the leotard while competing, having the leotard about the hip bone, the backless rules, the small straps, the skimpy, all those rules have no deduction in colleges. You can still take deductions for not complying with the uniform rules or the jewelry and stud piercing rules. Last week at the session, there was a question to Donna about the floor exercise special requirements. In the modifications right now, it reads 1 acrobatic pass with 2 saltos, same or different, or 2 directly connected saltos. Some people were interpreting that to mean that 2 directly connected saltos did not have to be in a pass. But the intent of the coaches when they proposed it originally was that the 2 directly connected saltos had to be in a pass. So this will come out on the December 15th rules news. So it will now read 1 acrobatic pass with 2 saltos, same or different, or 1 acrobatic pass with 2 directly connected saltos. And the definition of the acrobatic pass is defined as it was, which is 1 or more acro elements. 1 element must be a salto valued at a C or higher. This came about because of a discussion about the B+B pass. Yes, it gets bonus if there are 2 different elements in college, but it doesn't fulfill the 2 salto special requirement pass because it doesn't have a C. This was an example that we did in the coaches clinic. So you could have the front layout half, which gives you 2 of your different salto requirements. Then you have the dance series. Then you could have front handspring, front double full punch front. It's a double salto pass with 2 different saltos. It also fulfills the last salto and then the dance element at the back. So this would fulfill your value parts and your special requirements. But it's a 1 pass routine because the front lay half does not meet the definition of a pass. So there would be a 1/10 deduction for up to the level.
So a new vault chart did just come out in that December 6th modifications. That's one reason to be sure and go and download that. The reason for that was there had been a vault that had been deleted from the list of vaults, and it was deleted because it was considered to be the same as another vault that was listed. What we're talking about here are vaults that can either be half fronts or back halves. So that was fine on the Sukahara side. One of those vaults was deleted. But the problem is on the Yurchenko side, they still listed the 2 vaults as different, same vault values, but different vaults. So there was a Yurchenko back half and a half front. The concern was that because judges would see it as 2 separate vaults on the Yurchenko side, but it wasn't listed on the Sukahara vaults, that it would confuse us. Because of that, they went through and they changed the wording for these vaults that have directional changes and saltos in the same vault. But in the process of doing that, they also changed some of the vault numbers. But as always, you judge the vault that you see, not the vault that was flashed. We've just put up today on our website a new document, and the new document has the new vault chart. And they've got some other drawings as well to help us with the markings of the mat. Now, truthfully, that's not something we have to be too concerned about, but these were sent to the coaches and they wanted us to have them as judges. There's no requirement for a center line. We had shown this picture earlier because this is what's used in the elite world. And college does not have that requirement for a center line. It was just to show you the cone shape. The big question here is there's no change in how we apply deductions. We apply the same deductions we've always applied. This is simply a visual aid for us. And I think it'll be particularly helpful when we have mats that sometimes fly up when the athletes land, or when you're judging on a podium meet in particular. That line might help us determine how to apply our deductions. I enlarged this part of the vault chart so you can see the wording changes. So now you'll see it no longer says back tuck salto or front tuck salto. It now just says they're doing a tuck salto with a full, a pike salto with a half, a layout salto with a full. Today I received a video of the cause vault. This was one of the vaults that was in question. So this is an example of a vault that uses a cause technique, which I have recently learned is more like a cartwheeling action onto the table, and that affects the direction of the turn. For us, the important point is if she does the half front or the back half, we are not deducting for the directionality of that turn or salto. We did have an issue with vault matting last year, and matting is an area that has not really been emphasized for us. So Linda Thorberg and I had developed a clinic on matting across all events last year for the age group program. I modified this few of the questions for vault for collegiate. The only allowable entry pads for college are the TAC 10 round-off pads. The question is that true or false? And the answer, it is true. And you can go to the NCAA rules mods, and it's on page 10. That is a visual of the TAC 10 entry pad. And then you see it also being used by a gymnast at NCAA nationals. And that pad can be turned either direction. Next question is, the round-off pad may be used as a visual aid for forward entry vaults. And that's false. It can only be used for round-off and front handspring onto the board entry vaults. So the wording on that may have thrown you a little bit because forward sounds like front handspring, but we call them hand placement mat typically in age group program. So when you call it the round-off pad, I know of at least one instance and when that was confused with the U-shaped mat. So be sure that when you're reading the rules, you know that the round-off pad is actually what we call the hand placement mat. And then the rule makes a lot of sense because the only place you would use the hand placement mat are for vaults where you are putting your hands on the mat. True or false? A gymnast may repeat her routine with no penalty if the hand placement mat slips, and the answer is false. If the hand placement mat slips, it's not considered an apparatus or a personal equipment failure, so there is no repetition of the vault. Now, the safety zone mat, sometimes called the U mat, is required for round-off entry and front handspring onto the board entry vaults. I don't think anybody on this call knows that that is not true. It's maybe the most important of all the matting rules we have for vault because of some experiences with gymnasts who have gotten seriously injured. This mat was designed to prevent those injuries and has done an excellent job of doing that. We only just repeat that simply to remind everybody that yes, that safety zone mat is required for the round-off entry, as well now as for the front handspring onto the board entry vaults. The next question, it is acceptable to have space between the board and the safety zone mat for vaults that do not use a front handspring on the mat or a round-off entry. Yes, that is acceptable, so there's no deduction. That would not be appropriate for the front handspring onto the mat or the round-off entry vaults. A 4-inch throw mat and a sting mat may be placed on top of the allowable competition landing mats. The sting mat must be on top. Is that true or false? That is false. The sting can be on top of or under the mats. Got a picture here. This is one we typically see. You see the sting on top of the set of mats. And here you can see the sting is underneath the mat. It's not even visible. We don't even often see that sting being put in under the mat because we're busy judging the vault that went before. So that is perfectly acceptable, though, still at this point. There has been discussion about changing it, but the rule right now reads that the sting can be under the mat or it can be on top of the mat. Next true or false question is, it is not required to cover the upright of the vault table, but it is recommended. That's false. Safety pads are required on the uprights. And there's a couple different versions of those. One that we most often see are these mats that are almost like panel mats. They attach with Velcro under the table. They can be adjusted depending on the mats that are being used or the height of the table. Another kind is kind of a wraparound type. They wrap around with Velcro. They're a little bit more difficult to use if the coaches have to adjust the setting of the vault table, particularly during warm-ups. So why is the vault pad needed? We've run across a couple of pictures, a gymnast who missed her approach and ended up under the table. And I'm sure we're very happy that we had the safety pad there. And here's a video we found of one. But that one did not have the safety mats on there, and it would have been more comforting to all of us if she had been. A total of 18 inches of matting may be used in the vault landing area. That's true. So, but the maximum of 9 inches, it can be placed on top of a maximum of 9 inches of competition landing mats. The NCAA is considering allowing a total of 18 inches for all mats, the competition landing mats and the supplemental mats. So please check the rules news for a final decision if this change is made. The collegiate world, for the most part, uses the 20-centimeter competition landing mat. Some of you may have called this the base mat because it's at the base of all the other mats. But when we read the rules, that doesn't work because the base mat's actually something else. So the competition landing mat in the college, you're going to see this very large mat that's got the red arrow pointing to it. That's the end of the vaulting. So we're going to move now into some of the enhanced roles of the meet referee. So last year we had a pilot program for the enhanced role of the meet referee. We're going to talk about which of the functions carried forward. And then you'll also remember we had 3 different versions of meet referee checklists because changes were being made due to this enhanced role of the meet referee. So obviously we all wanted them consolidated, and that is now what has happened, and it is in your supplemental procedures and forms. Last year, these first 2 bullets were part of the pilot program, and they have been adopted. And that was that the meet referee may ask questions, counsel the panel, offer their opinion during inquiries. We found that in different regions of the country, the practice for that in the age group program was different. In some places, that was something that was always allowed, and in other places, that was strictly not allowed. As collegiate meet referees, there was a variation in terms of whether or not they would participate in the inquiry discussions or not. So the pilot program basically allowed the meet referee to participate. That has been adopted now for future years. And last year, the pilot was to require the judges be evaluated by the meet referees as well as the coaches in RTN. The coaches had always, of course, evaluated the judges, but the meet refs had not. We did do that last year, and that will continue on. And I will say, from a judging viewpoint, that was a great benefit because the evaluations from the meet referees tended to be very neutral. They knew the rules. They knew if the judge had applied the rules or not. And we really looked to the evaluation comments from the meet referee when there were situations that were questionable in the evaluations. New this year, the meet referee may now review the video if an equipment failure occurs. There was not an opportunity in the rules before to review the video. Now that will be an additional tool for the meet referee to use to make a decision regarding what to do in an equipment failure. In addition, and this is a big one, the meet referee may require a score change in certain circumstances now. The score can only be required to be changed by the meet referee when it's a question related to start value, value parts up to the level composition, skill combinations, neutral deductions under 2 conditions. First of all, the inquiry process has to have been completed. And that's important because we want the judge to be able to correct his or her own mistake first, rather than have the meet referee doing that. So this goes back to our philosophy about inquiries. We still have some judges who feel that an inquiry is an affront to their professionalism, that their judgment is being questioned. And we really just have to get over that. We have to get to the point, if you haven't already, that the inquiry process is the opportunity for you to correct a mistake to make sure that we get the score correct. And I'm such a proponent of this because we are the ones who are being criticized by everyone. We're criticized by social media, by the television commentators, by the coaches. And we all want our score be correct. So talk to other judges who object to having their judgment questioned. It's not that it's being questioned, it's just recognition that as humans, we make mistakes, and this is a chance for us to fix it, okay? And the other time that it's possible for the meet ref to require a score change is if there is split decision among the panel. And if the panel can't come to a decision, this rarely happens, but it has happened, then the meet referee makes the final decision. Now, the meet referee may require a score change regarding execution only when there is a clear yes/no decision possible. Some examples of that. Did the feet hit the bar or not? It's clearly yes, clearly no, assuming the video captured it from the correct position. If you can't tell from the video, the meet referee would have to make the decision in terms of how to respond. But my belief would be that if it's not clear cut on the video, then the ruling of the judges would stand. Grabbing the beam or not touching the bar on a release move would be some other examples of clear cut yes/no decisions. A meet referee is not able to require a score change in areas where a judgment call exists in the area of execution, except for the area of determining a value part, which I'll say something more about in a second. That's no change from what we already do. But if it's an amplitude deduction, if it's a degree of split deduction, if it's a degree of completion deduction, then that is not something the meet referee can require a score change. And of course, the only time this is probably going to happen is going to be when there is a video inquiry. We have been able in college to have an exception for value part determination. For example, if the gymnast is doing an undershoot to handstand, and one judge thought it was a C skill because she didn't get to within 20 degrees, and the other judge thought that it was a D skill and it affected the start value, then that is a time when, of course, you can have your score change because of execution. So it's execution in one way, but it's not really the execution like the amplitude or degree of the split. Was it 170 or 180 degrees of split? Or are you going to take a half a tenth or 1/10 for the degree of the handstand? It's really the determination of, was it a C value part or a D value part that is allowable.
The other place that you might have that is the decision whether it was a double full or a triple full.
That's a great one. That's a great example. All right, now the meet referee checklist, we have 3, just like we always had. They're the pre-meet procedures, the during the meet procedures, and the after meet procedures. Prior to the meet referee should communicate with the chief judge regarding the on-site review videos. So last year we instituted this, and most people who used it really liked it. Some people had trouble getting access to Wi-Fi and downloading. And so the meet referee kind of took this on as their responsibility. It's really a chief judge responsibility, but the meet referee is responsible for making sure that this occurs. They can do it either way. It doesn't matter. The meet referee can contact the chief judges and say, would you like me to get the videos? I'll bring the videos. I have them all on my iPad. I'm happy to bring them. Just let me know which ones you want. They can say to the chief judge, don't forget, you need to decide on the on-site review videos. There are directions for downloading them, so you're not dependent on access to Wi-Fi or a data plan to use them. And even when you have those, sometimes when we're underneath in the arenas, they're hard to play if you're depending on using them online. So you can download them, have them offline, and be able to use them. Some people have started using them in advance of the meet. So the panel decides for beam, they're both going to watch number 2, 4, and 6. So they look at those and then they get to the meet and they talk about them. That's fine. It's not actually the original purpose. The original purpose was for you to have a visual aid for the discussion you already are supposed to be having about the rules. So, our panels are supposed to get together, discuss the rules for college. And this was just a visual aid in which both judges would go through the videos, they would notate them, and then they would talk about the composition deductions, and particularly those that are the exceptions, as well as the special requirements and others. So that's fine. That's the intent. If it's easier for you to do them at home and then have that conversation at the meet. But this is for you to do the work. It's not for somebody to hand you the answer sheet. This is supposed to be to help you, particularly in the first meets of the year. You'll need to arrive early as a meet referee because you're going to want to introduce yourself to the head coaches, to the meet host, to the scorers, to the announcers, and that may vary depending on the location, but that's a general guideline. You want to ask about things like the format of the meet. Are there going to be TV holds? What kind of scoring devices they're using? The number of exhibition gymnasts, if any, and on what events. When do you signal the gymnast? Are you signaling it first as the announcer waiting for you, or are you waiting for the announcer? It varies at different meets and different conferences. And also, how are you going to know that the score sheet has been signed by the coaches? This was a point of contention, and you just need to clarify with the meet director or administrator at the meet. How are you going to know that so you can let the judges go? That did not get changed. We talked about that and proposed that, but that did not get changed. The judges still do need to stay until the coaches sign the score sheet. We want to expedite that as quickly as possible so judges can get out on the road, but that's one of the things the meet referee should clarify in advance. There was one thing that Lois wanted me to include in this that was a little confusing in the written checklist last year, and it had to do with equipment. We are not required, except at the national meets, to measure equipment. If there's an equipment issue, the meet referee will work with the meet director and the host to rectify the issue. Okay, for the pre-meet meeting checklist, or we've expanded a little bit just to get some more detail in for you. The meeting will start 45 minutes prior to the meet starting, and the judges need to be dressed and ready at 45 minutes so that that meeting can start promptly. The meet referee is going to discuss the information that I just talked about that they got from the meet director. They're going to review the rules modifications, any that are maybe have been problematic, but for the most part, the chief judge is going to do that with the panel. You're going to determine if the judges are familiar with the score entry process, and if they're not, please arrange for them to have a run through prior to the meet starting so that they won't have to fumble around with that equipment, which we sometimes have had to do. And it's very disconcerting when that happens. What used to be on the meet referee pre-meet checklist was in the meeting that the meet referee was supposed to remind the judges of the NAJ Code of Professional Responsibility. And probably every meeting I was in or I conducted, I said, don't forget to follow the NAJ Code of Professional Responsibility. And everybody went, okay. So we thought, let's say, well, what is it about that code that is supposed to be applicable to us here? Well, obviously, you need to be thoroughly prepared. Well, by the time of the meeting, it's probably a little too late, except you do have the meeting time to continue your preparation. So do that. To look and act professional, to produce your scores quickly and accurately, to be prepared to explain and support your scores in conferences, inquiries, and routine summaries, to render fair, honest, and impartial judgments, to refrain from commenting about the meet or your assignment on social media. So we're going to re-emphasize this because every year there's always an issue with just a few judges who want to tell people, I'm on my way to University of so-and-so to judge a meet. I can't wait. It's really not something that should be on social media. People don't need to know what meet you are doing or how great you thought the meet was or how awful you thought the meet was. We want to emphasize the importance of non-reputational judging. Judge today's routine, not what you saw on TV or social media. You need to score consistently across teams, conferences, and divisions. And just a reminder, every half-tenth counts, not just for the team qualifying score, but also for the individual athlete's qualifying score. Some athletes will qualify to regionals and perhaps nationals based on that qualifying score, even if their team doesn't. And that's extremely important to them. And so that half-tenth can count. It can make a difference on which athletes are going to be granted All-American status. And there's other honors and awards in which the cumulative scoring of an athlete or a team matter. Don't just think, oh, we were just half a tenth apart, that's fine. Were you a half a tenth apart for legitimate reasons? That's what's really important. We did change the wording of this to ask the auxiliary judges to introduce themselves. It used to say that the meet rep would introduce the auxiliary judges. Depending on what type of school you're at, you may not know who the auxiliary judges are, and so it's kind of an awkward situation. So we changed the word. You ask them to introduce themselves. You're going to distribute your lineup sheets and your score sheets. We're going to ask the judges to check if their name and rating is correct. And it's ideal if they can do that in the pre-meet, because if they don't catch it until after the meet is over, then the whole score sheets have to be rerun. You want to provide enough time for on-site reviews during that meeting. And please remind the judges to stay in uniform until all the summary forms have been completed, and don't leave until the coaches have signed the score sheets. And turn in the pre-meet checklist to the meet director. During the meet, now this is going to depend if you're a walking meet ref or a judging meet ref. So what you'll see on the checklist is there's asterisks by those that we know it's not realistic to expect that a judging meet ref is going to be able to do these at least all of the time. They might be able to do it if they're on a short event. They might be able to look over and monitor open scoring, for example. But we do want the walking meet refs for sure to monitor the open scoring and make sure judges are flashing their start value and their score at the same time. You also want to ensure conferences are conducted in a timely manner. Again, if you're a judging meet ref, you may have to be at your event. You may not have time to do that. You certainly won't have time if you're a judging meet ref to judge 50% of the routines, but we want to try to have the walking meet refs do that. Now, we did hear a couple of comments from walking meet refs last time that they felt like they just couldn't get everything done, and your other duties as meet ref during the meet are highest priority. This is simply to help if a coach has a question, you might have actually been able to have notated that routine, and you can then be knowledgeable when you're talking to that coach. Although that's what's desirable, it's not a requirement. So if you're feeling pressured for time or for duties, or you're feeling you're being conflicted because you're supposed to be in two places at once, this is one that you can sacrifice, but you can do it to the extent that's possible. You need to consult with the coaches on an inquiry form. Help them out to make sure that they're filling it out completely so that the judges can respond to it correctly. And you are able to review a video before taking an inquiry to the panel if you didn't see the routine. And most likely in the case of the judging meet referees, that will almost always be the case. So as a meet ref, either walking or judging, if you did not see the routine, you are allowed to review the video before taking that inquiry to the panel. You also need to follow the video inquiry procedures. I'm going to postpone that discussion. You will act as a final authority on technical matters. You gather the routine summary forms to present to the judges. You note the warnings of non-performance neutral deductions, notify the chief judges. So if somebody gives a yellow card on one event, then you might want to let the chief judge on the next event know that that happened, so that we would know that they had followed the appropriate procedure. You're going to handle any team deductions with the scoring table, and you need to be prepared to judge if needed. So you need to bring your materials for all 4 events and be prepared to step in. After the meet, you need to oversee the score checking and the signing of score sheets. Please don't distribute the summary forms. This is in the rules modifications. Don't distribute the summary forms until the score sheets are signed. And that's because we don't want the judges distracted from checking the score sheets. The score sheets need to be accurate. And if they're starting to work on the summary forms, their mind is already elsewhere. So they just don't distribute those summary forms until the score sheets are signed. Remind them, of course, that they need to stay until the score sheets are signed. And then ensure that the summary forms are completed independently and correctly. And as much as we have emphasized that, we have had a couple of evaluations come in that have stated that the judges sat together and talked about the forms. So please sit apart, do it independently, and don't discuss them. You can ask the judges if there's any areas of uncertainty, and as a meet referee, you can communicate that to the coaches. So for example, you may have gotten off the floor and thought, boy, I tried to count up all my value parts and I wasn't sure, I may be missing an A, but we both flashed a 10-0, but I still am worried about that. So as a judge, you should let your meet referee know that, and then the meet referee can take that information to the coach. As a meet referee, please don't say that in a judgmental way of that judge, she missed that A, but say it as you might just want to check to make sure that athlete A, B, or C has all her A's, B's, and C's. The purpose of this is to communicate to coaches if a judge thinks she may have made a mistake, but it doesn't show up in the start value, the UTL, or the score, and we want to make sure that that gets corrected. You need to be available for the head coaches 5 minutes after the signing of the score sheets. So just make yourself visible and hang around. so that the judges in the room don't have to wait for you. You try to designate somebody that you can text or call to let them know that it's okay to leave. Or perhaps they're going to assign a staff member to go back and let the judges know they can leave, but you need to stay out there for 5 minutes. You're going to be recording the yellow cards and send a detailed report to the national assigner. This is really important because we don't have very many coaches who demonstrate behaviors worthy of a yellow card, but when we do, they often tend to be serious situations. The ethics committee for the coaches will review those yellow card deductions, but they have to have enough information to know what happened so they can follow through with it. And then, of course, the national assigner is who you send those to. It used to say your regional assigner and your national assigner, but you really only need to send that report to the national assigner. But try to provide as detailed of a report as you can as to what happened when and what the behavior was that was considered to be offensive. And then you have to evaluate the judges in Road to Nationals Jazz after the meet. And please do that. It's so helpful.
We also are very happy to receive comments when you do the evaluations. You may be thinking in terms of just answering the questions, but if there's a comment you want to make, positive or negative, about a situation, put it in there. We read everything. It's helpful to have extra comments when there are appropriate.
Thank you for saying that, because that is really important. Put those positive comments in there too, because the coaches have lots of positive reactions to us. You'll see that when we look at the data, but they get so busy during the season that doing the evaluations is just one more thing for them to have to do. So that they may start off and make a lot of comments, including some positive ones. And by mid-season or the end of the season, we're lucky to get the evaluation, number one, but we pretty much are not getting comments unless they're upset. And then we end up having negative comments without the positive ones to offset them. And you get kind of a skewed look at the judge. So meet referees, put your comments in, put in the positive things, as well as any that might be concerns that you might have. Okay, the yellow card is a little bit different this year. The yellow card now is considered the warning. It's information provided to the head coach that some unusual behavior occurred. If a second yellow card is issued, then the 1/10 deduction is taken from the team score. There's no red card in collegiate gymnastics. And the reason we don't is because the coach is allowed to stay on the floor for safety purposes. The coaches may be needed for spotting and equipment adjustments for the athlete. We don't want to do anything to put the athlete in harm's way. So that's why we have no red card. And the yellow card can be issued, as it always has been, by any judge or by the meet rep. And it then appears as a neutral deduction on the score sheet. I said earlier today in this session that we had a request from some judges to give them some examples of when a yellow card might be considered. We put together a list last year. It was on our website last year. It has been sent out to the coaches this year. So they have these as examples. It doesn't mean that if you see one of these that it has to be. You have to evaluate the whole context to make that decision of whether or not you're going to give a yellow card. So if they address an official in a disrespectful manner, if they attempt to influence the official's decisions by their words, expressions, behavior, if they object to an official's decision by words, expressions, gestures, body language, or similar behaviors, if they use a loud voice and hostile gestures when talking to a meet referee, or when submitting an inquiry, or when submitting routine summaries, we shouldn't have to put up with that kind of behavior. And we rarely do have it. When we do have it, it's very upsetting. If they incite undesirable crowd reactions, if they use profanity or language that's abusive, vulgar, obscene, or if they make derogatory remarks about the officials, athletes, or spectators, if they make comments relating to race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation, or disability, this would be a time to consider a yellow card. If they flaunt the issuance of a yellow card, issue your second yellow card right away and take 1/10 deduction from the team. And any other behaviors that are considered to be poor sportsmanship. Again, these are possibilities for you to think about. Use your judgment, use the context of the meet to make the final decision. It is going to be your judgment call. This doesn't hardly ever happen. And the only reason it's coming up now is because there was a procedure for giving a gymnast a yellow card for unsportsmanlike conduct. And what happened is it said that we were supposed to take a 1/10 deduction from the gymnast's score for that event. A meet referee actually asked us this question. There was a gymnast who was not competing, who she was thinking about giving a deduction for her behavior, but she wasn't competing on that event. And it's possible that that gymnast could even be there and not be competing at all that meet. So we asked the question, what do we do with it in this situation? And it prompted a big discussion, but it didn't get an answer. So all you can do is use your best judgment as meet referee, because the rules don't tell us where to take that deduction. I assume that the circumstance might help you form that decision. Let's hope we never have that happen. The inquiry process and the video inquiry process. This is an exciting development, and it's going to be helpful if judges understand that a video inquiry, a video review even, but this is a video inquiry, is a way for us to correct our mistakes. We make mistakes. We don't want to make mistakes, but it happens. What I said at the coaches convention was, when we make a mistake, it's immediately out there. The coaches are watching a video and they see we're wrong. The social media people are commenting because they see it's wrong, and they're doing actual instant replays. Television people are doing instant replays. They can see it's wrong. People in the audience are watching it on their phones and they can see it's wrong. The only people who don't get to see it are those people who can actually correct the mistake. So please view this whole concept of a video inquiry as an opportunity for us to correct the mistake, and then it's done, it's over. You don't need to be embarrassed by that mistake. You don't need to feel that they'll think badly of you because of the mistake. In fact, the kinds of comments we receive from the coaches in the evaluation system are, she made a mistake and she corrected it, and we really appreciate it. They know we're human beings. They know we're under a lot of stress and that we're jumping back and forth from rules. So please view this as a tool, an opportunity for you to correct your mistake, but also to keep from being more embarrassed, because out there in the world of social media, they're sure talking about your mistake if you don't fix it. So the process is actually going to be pretty simple. The key for us is going to be to make it happen in a timely manner so we don't hold up the meet. That's key number one. We don't want to hold up the meet, so we're going to talk about that. But literally they use the same form, and you'll see that there's 2 boxes up there now. One is an inquiry, which is a regular inquiry like we've always had. And the other, if the coach chooses, the coach can check the box video inquiry. They can also then provide a device with the video cued to the routine in question. They'll give that to the meet referee, and then we'll talk about that more. But that's the only change in the form. So the form's been adjusted to include the new video inquiry. The coach decides if they want to submit a regular or a video inquiry. They can talk with the meet referee. So you as a meet referee can help them in making that decision. And if it is going to be a video inquiry, then as we said, the coach provides a cued video to the meet referee, and the coach does not participate in the inquiry process. As a meet referee, check the inquiry form, make sure it's accurate and complete. If it's not, take it back to the coach just to save time. This, of course, will be much harder for judging meet referees than walking meet referees, but do try to make sure it's accurate and complete to save time for the judges. Remind the coach, please, that additional deductions are allowed if a score is changed. If we have that rule now, and theoretically they're supposed to know that rule, and they probably know it at one time, but they may have forgotten it in the heat of the moment. So just as a courtesy, remind them, I could take it, and if they think she did a this instead of a that, or they decide they're going to change it from a this to a that and give you the higher value part credit for it, don't forget they can take an additional execution deduction for incompletion or the rhythm of the connection. Just remind them of that so they know. Let's say you decided to give the E for a dance skill on floor instead of a D after you saw the video, but you know you would have taken incompletion. So you might have given a 10th more in bonus, but you might end up taking a 10th more in execution. But maybe not. Maybe it's only a half a 10th that you would take in execution. So then there is a half a 10th benefit for the inquiry. You take the form and the video if applicable to the chief judge. You're supposed to complete the inquiry before the next event. This may not be possible if you have multiple inquiries, so use your discretion. If you have to postpone and not get that inquiry finished until the end of the next rotation, do that to keep the meet moving. The coaches we talked to about this are concerned about the timing of it. They don't want their athletes standing and waiting while we make sure we take care of business. So if we've got 2 inquiries on beam and I can only get one of them done, get one done, hold the next one, let them referee know they don't have time, they don't want to hold up your athlete. they're going to proceed and they'll handle it as soon as they get to it.
Can the 2-minute transition be halted until inquiries are done?
You know,
I would say no, you just keep the meet going.
the meet needs to keep going because they're on schedule. Many of them are televised. That television station has got the next meet on hold. Plus, it's not just television, it's audience interest. You know, we don't want to lose the audience. Audience is very important to our sport in terms of being able to get the television coverage and to continue to recruit great athletes to come into the system.
Can a coach check both video and written inquiry? Check both boxes?
There's no reason to, because it's the same process. The only difference is with the video inquiry, they said they get the video. There's nothing else that's different.
And can you clarify that the additional deductions that they might see on the video review for a skill or series in question, and not the other deductions on another skill?
Exactly. So let's just say they were doing a POPA on beam and I didn't think she got all the way around. That's the only thing that you can adjust. So if I went up and I gave it the full value, I can take legitimately for incompletion because I might have given it a lower value before, but I can't go and take it on the back layout step out because now I see she had bent legs.
And is there any limit to the number of video inquiries per meet?
No, there is not. They are allowed to submit as many inquiries as they need. And again, the key to this, we really, really, really need your help. Keep this moving. We don't want to lose the opportunity to have a video inquiry. If we start getting the meets held up, we'll lose that opportunity. Remember, this is not just to help the athlete. This is to help us. If you've ever been to one of my mistake clinics where we talk about the worst mistakes in sports history, and what that has done to the individuals who have been involved.
If you've done the video inquiry, can you then submit a regular inquiry after that?
Well, this is the same thing. Think of it the same way I talked about the on-site video reviews. All the video inquiry is they're giving you a visual aid to help you with the process you're already doing. So they're not two separate processes. They're one process. They're an inquiry. Some may choose to give you the video. Some may not. The meet referee also needs to ensure that the score is changed at the scores table if there is a change that's going to occur, and be sure and return the inquiry form to the coach and inform the coach of the decision. Again, let's try to promote this. Let's try to keep a great attitude about this. This can be a really helpful tool. We want it to go well, and that means it's going to have to go quickly. And for the judges, it means you can't be defensive. If they bring that to you and you see, I'm going to use the famous one that I always use. If you see that, oh, she did do a ring jump and I missed it, give her the ring jump. That's the end of it. It's over. Moving on to routine summary forms. For another year, we'll have to say that this probably is the area in which we get the most complaints. So the coach can provide 2 copies of the routine summary form, or they can provide 2 copies of an inquiry form with the elements already listed. We did receive some feedback that some meet referees or judges would not accept the inquiry forms. That's not appropriate to do. The rules clearly allow them to submit either 2 routine summary forms or 2 inquiry forms. Each judge needs to complete this independently. Write the deduction, write the reason for the deduction. You have to write the reason for the deduction. If you don't know, skip down to my last bullet. Don't make it up. Just write, I didn't notate it, and they'll not be happy, but they'll be less happy than if you put something down that you're just trying to make up to put something down. So write the deduction and the reason for it. Don't use shorthand, and make sure that your deductions that you list total your score. So if you had a 9.8 score, you should have 2/10 in deductions that you're explaining. Here's what I think happens. A lot of judges are not in the habit of notating why they took a deduction. They get the shorthand down, they get the value down, they get the deduction down 1/10. But later on, if they have to go back and look, they may not know why they took that 1/10. So we had some videos submitted last year along with the summary forms, and they said, look at the video and look at the summary form and you decide what happened. The handstand on high bar on the left, you can see it's a pretty nice handstand. The judge wrote that a 1/10 deduction was taken for the gymnast not being in vertical. On the picture on the right, it was a toe up to the high bar, And the judge wrote on the summary form, a 1/10 deduction was taken for not rotating and opening the sit-up. Well, as you can see there, pretty doggone good. What I think happens is not that the judges don't know, they didn't write down why. And they might have even written the 1/10 under the different skills. So then when they went and looked at it, it's because they can't tell, did I take it on the handstand or did I take it on the giant? So they write something. In looking at these particular routines, I think we felt that the score was probably correct for the gymnast, but the reasons on the routine summary form didn't match what the athlete actually performed, which to me is a big clue that they just didn't notate it and they were stuck and they had to write something, and so they did. So what that means is we all need more practice if you're not proficient at it. And I don't think everybody's proficient all the time because it does go pretty fast. We collected from, you'll see the names of the judges at the bottom who participated and sent us their notations. We put them all together. These are some notations you can use. You can make up your own. It doesn't matter what you use. Try to get something down to help you fill out the routine summary form if you're asked. You can practice that with video. You can practice that at age group meets time. And even the most proficient judge doesn't get it all down all the time. So when in doubt, just let the coach know, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Returning the summary reviews has been problematic for some people, meaning they can't find the coach. The coach has exited the building, got in the bus and left. What do you do in those situations?
I've taken them to whoever was running the meet director, and they usually will say, I'll get them to the coach.
All right, the video review process has changed just slightly. The form now includes UTL. I think a year or 2 years ago, it got added to being allowed, but it didn't make it onto the form. So it's there now. They're allowed to do one video review per meet. They must be submitted within 5 minutes of the end of the meet, and the end of the meet is defined as the final score is posted or the last inquiry has been completed. The coach provides the form and the cued video to the meet referee. They can use team video or television video for this. This is the big change. There's no deduction for a failed video review. So we used to have the 1/10 deduction for the failed video review. We no longer will be taking that deduction. And then the reviews are limited to performance or non-performance of, and this has not changed, the start value, value parts, combinations of elements up to the level of neutral deductions. It can't be used for execution or composition other than the UTL, because UTL falls under composition. The video review may not be used for execution or composition deductions other than the UTL, which actually is under the composition category. If they do, it's possible that you could take a 1/10 deduction. My advice to you as a meet referee would be not to get to the point where we're ever going to have to take a 1/10 deduction. You should be, if you're a walking meet ref, be able to communicate enough with that coach to look at the form and say, I think I'm going to give that back to you because you do remember the rule.
If I put in a video inquiry because I thought my kid did a good sheep jump and the one judge didn't give her credit, but watching the video to get to the sheep jump, they notice that she grabbed the bottom of the beam on one side. They can't go back and take that then, right?
No.
They can only take deductions on the video review on the element or the question on the inquiry.
On the video review, that's the case for sure. On the video inquiry, I'm going to say this, the coach they don't know exactly why the judges came out to where they came out. They might have a good idea, but it could be that they thought that you didn't give her credit for the sheep jump, but maybe I actually gave her credit for the sheep jump, but I didn't give her credit for something else. So I think it's going to be a little different on the video inquiry because of that situation. For video review, you're correct. They're going to submit a video review and it'll be very specific, but on the video inquiry, I can see it may not match up just exactly like I said.
Except, as you said earlier, Cookie, they can't suddenly go back to things that there was no disagreement on.
This all stays the same. Reviews occurs on the floor. It needs to be out in the open public. It occurs only in the presence of the meet ref and the panel only. Position yourself so you're not where a camera can see you.
Mhm.
The camera people have been trained for the most part to not interfere with the judges, but just in case, try to get out of the way of the camera, try to get out of the way of the audience, try to get away from the team so that you can have your conversation without being overheard and then being quoted or misquoted later on. In the video review, it can be viewed in any speed, regular or slow motion, or both. This was a question that came up and was clarified. Yes, you can zoom in if needed. So if you're on an iPad or an iPhone and you need to zoom in to see, you may do that. And the simple majority rules, and the meet referee breaks the tie. And the meet referee notes the outcome on the video review form, ensures the score is changed. The judges sign the updated score sheets, and then the decisions of the video review are final. In professionalism, pretty simple. Wear your official NAJ jacket with the patch, pants, and skirt. The sweater is okay under your jacket, but in college, it can't be worn in place of the jacket. You need to wear your jacket with the NAJ patch on it. And it is, interestingly, I think maybe for the first time, we had a coach complain that a judge wasn't in uniform. So they do seem to notice. And professionalism, and be aware of your appearance, because others are aware of your appearance, and particularly now that we're being televised. So your facial expression needs to be neutral or pleasant. Refrain from chewing gum, and watch your body language. We know that, slumping or resting your head on your hand gives the appearance that you're not interested. Try not to look down your chin at gymnasts. If you're just watching from a coach's perspective, an audience perspective, it gives the appearance that the judge is looking down their nose at the athlete. Keep your head at a neutral height so that you do not appear to be looking down at the gymnast. Avoid looking around at scores as they're being posted, other than your own scores, your own event, of course. And then avoid talking to other judges. Either at your own event, like you're sitting around and waiting, or even during the event or between events, because they worry that you're somehow saying something that's going to affect the outcome of the meet, even though you're talking about where you're going to go to dinner. Consider the implications of things you say when talking to coaches and staff. These are direct quotes. One judge really offended a coach, and they said, "I usually judge an XX conference, and I'm surprised how good your gymnasts are." They meant it as a compliment, but it came across as you came in with a prejudgment that our conference wasn't as good as XX conference was. Okay. This one should be obvious. This is my first time as a meet ref, and I don't know what I'm doing. This one to me is offensive. This is her first time judging a college meet. She may need some help. Now, first of all, there's no way that anybody needs to know that judge, it's her first meet. It stigmatizes that judge. And we know it because coaches will say in the evaluation, she did a really great job for her first meet. We're going like, how'd they know it was her first meet? Right? Give that judge the opportunity to go out there and judge and have that score be considered to be just as valid as if they've been judging for 50 years. This one came up when we were looking at the vault chart, and we were told by one coach that a judge said that they could give the vault a 0 because it wasn't listed on the vault chart. If it's a mushy vault and there's no vault that's like it in the mushy version, pick the vault that's closest to it in the non-mushy version. But let's not make statements that are threatening. Watch what you say to other judges. So one coach told us this happened. They said that I judged this team last week and they really had a problem with their performance on such and such an event. Well, what happened last week happened last week. Their concern is that it'll prejudice the judges to think that they're already having problems on that particular event or whatever. Or the last time I judged there, the coach was really hostile. Well, that could have been a very specific event. So again, try not to say things that might have an influence on the judges. On the positive as well as the negative. Wow, did you see her beam routine last week? It was so great. Are you setting up the mindset of the judges in the room? And then this one is really bothersome. A couple of judges who have come into the meeting and said, well, I don't give 10-0 scores because it could always be better. Athletes do occasionally perform 10-0 scores. I know that some people think that there were too many 10s given, but we had really great athletes last year, and we had a lot of experienced athletes last year. All right, and then the coaches evaluate the judges after every meet, or at least they have the opportunity to. Those evaluations are reviewed for trends, not for isolated instances, unless it's a really grievous occurrence. And then Lois and others look into that situation. Questions are, and they have been posted on our website, but I'm going to give you just a quick overview of some of the questions now. Did you return your contract on time? Were you cooperative in making travel arrangements? Open scoring protocol, was it followed? Were routine summaries completed correctly? Were inquiries completed correctly? Did the judge demonstrate confidence and timeliness in scoring? Did the judge apply the rules correctly in terms of start value composition and UTL? And then the next one has to do with the same thing, only execution and composition. And did they judge without bias? The example that you see in front of you, if you haven't looked at evaluations, or if you didn't get them last year, you would not have gotten them last year. We use the rule, you have to have 4 meets that were evaluated by 4 different teams. At least this is what you will see. The highest you can get is all or mostly positive. So we look at all of the evaluations. We could take the numbers, they're ranked 1 through 5 on a scale. And if they're all or mostly positive, that's what you will see. If there's mixed responses, then you'll see one that says mixed response. And then I think the one that I don't show is needs improvement. If the coaches had the time to write positive comments, we will try to summarize those and put those there. And you see some examples. And likewise, if there's areas that they indicated in their comments that you need to work on, we will summarize those and put them there. Where will you find it? You're going to find it in Road to Nationals. So you see the list when you open up Road to Nationals, you see that it says evaluation summary. This is the second year you will receive evaluation feedback, assuming you had it last year or this year. It's not cumulative. You're only going to see this year's results. It is confidential and anonymous. No one will know this but you. The only other person who can look at this besides you is Jason, who does all the computer programming for Road to Nationals. Lois and I prepare the summaries that go up, and we do see all of your evaluations, but nobody else can see it. Your regional assigner can't see it. Nobody other than Jason can see the summary after it's posted. These are the results of this last year's evaluation for everybody who was evaluated. And as you'll see, if you 96% of our judges received 1s or 2s, which are the highest ratings, and both are considered acceptable. So a 1 is like you're close to perfect. A 2 is you might have made a mistake on 1 start value or 1 up to the level. And they note that, but they don't have to write a comment about that. And it's not considered a negative. So 96% of our judges received positive evaluations for correct application of the rule, and only 4% were in the 3, 4, or 5 range. The correct application of execution and composition, this was a little lower this year than it was the year before. Last year it was 96%. This year it's 92%. And then judging without bias, taking all teams into consideration, likewise was 96%. So I hope that this helps you not fear the evaluation process, but to feel good about yourself, but also not to be, again, defensive if you get an area or 2 that you may need to work on. It's all designed to help you get better and not make mistakes. Okay, how are the evaluations used? We discuss them every week, Lois, myself, and with the executive director of the Coaches Association. And what we're looking for are trends. Anything that we need to do a better job of educating, that maybe Lois needs to send out an announcement to prevent it from happening again, or perhaps there was an individual situation that needs to be addressed. And so when that latter happens, Lois contacts the judge or the meet ref to make sure we've got the story straight. And if in fact there's corrective action needed, or if it was just a thing of like, hey, it happened, put it behind you, move forward, move onward and upward. When the college invitational meets and the conference champion meets are assigned, these evaluations are looked at for some of those. So there are some rules that Lois has to follow in assigning those, but when she gets to the point that she has an option of who to assign, she may go and look to see how the judge did in a comparable meet to see if they're ready to do that level of meet, or if maybe they need more experience before they jump into a conference championship. The NCAA committee that selects judges for postseason assignment does consider a data summary, and they do use that summary for consideration for postseason assignments. And most importantly, it informs our educational activities and our potential changes in the assigning process. So when we see that something's going wrong and it needs to be addressed through education, we'll try to get on that. And then likewise, it does give us feedback for, do we need to make any changes in how we assign judges?
On the assignments for postseason, the committee does receive the synopsis of evaluations from Lois and Cookie. But also, I want the judges to know that when those assignments are done, the committee does not see any names. They only see state you're from, what region you're from, how many years you've been judging college and your rating, and then a synopsis of the meet evaluations. They do not see names when they make assignments. The other thing to keep in mind too is that there's only a certain number of judges from each state allowed. At
Right.
nationals, I know there's only one judge per state allowed on the floor at nationals. So if you're from a state that has a lot of collegiate judges, it's harder to get that meet. And also on regionals, they choose specific amount of judges from each region, and then they divide those up between the regions. So if you're from a region that has a lot of collegiate judges, it's harder to get assigned to those meets. So there are parameters that they have to use, not only by who you are, what rating you are, what your evaluations say, but other parameters that they have to stay within when they make the assignments as well.
In terms of availability, we're still getting meets to assign. As recently as December 5th, we had an increase in one of the local meets and we had an increase in one of the championships. So we're constantly telling you to update your availability. And right now, you can go ahead and delete any dates where you can no longer travel due to other assignments. It's very unlikely you get a piggyback right now. So if you are going somewhere for a meet on Friday and you know you can't do another meet on Saturday because you can't get anywhere else, delete that Saturday or put it in as unavailable. The event assignments for the invitationals and the conference meets will be done by the meet referee, and they get done as the season progresses. So if a meet's in March, they're not going to be done right away. We do them for January, February, March in that order. And where possible, they're based on your event selections that you put in JAS. So if you care what events you're going to get at a conference invitational, then go ahead and put your event choices in there. Just a general comment. Thank you for those of you who are here because of the meet referee update. But it's also true that the colleges require a meet referee on every meet. So a judge who may not have indicated they wanted to be a meet referee may be assigned as a meet referee because we need them. The question I get the most often is, how do I find out who my assigner is? It's on the bottom left of the payment page. And the schools need those contracts back. They need it to make travel arrangements and flights, and they need to complete the university paperwork for your payment. So get them back quickly. Okay, compensation. This question has come up continuously in the last couple of weeks. In addition to the compensation document, there are unusual situations like piggyback meets, meaning 2 meets on a weekend that require adjustments. Discuss it with your regional assigner. Basically, what we're doing when we determine these is the $150 overnight fee covers transportation to and from the home airport, airport parking for the 2 days you're away, baggage fees for the 2 trips, and your meals. If there's an additional overnight, then the fee is prorated to cover the things that you still have to pay for. Additional day of airport parking and meals at the USAG rate. Usually tends to be about $85. All right, this is just a quick review of where we are this season. And if they're on board with us tonight, I want to thank the regional assigners, and to thank the Educational Committee for NAWJ, who do a lot of work preparing training materials for you. This year, there are 369 active judges. That's down a little bit. Last year, we had a lot of people because of COVID who thought, well, I don't know how many meets there are going to be in age group, so maybe I'd like to judge college. So we had a big bump up, but then some of those people decided that age group was really going to function, so they didn't have to worry about it. 2,229 assignments. That's up from 2,086. 84 colleges, that's also up by several colleges, and 359 meets, which is up by 25. There were 10 judges with no meet assignment due to affiliation, inactive weekends submitted, non-local geographics, or late submission as new judges. I got in the last month probably 4 or 5 new judge applications, which is, as you know, is a little late to get an assignment unless it's a fill-in. 6 is the average number of meets per judge this season. It's up from 5.5. 197 of our 369 judges had more than 6 meets, and that's up. There were 20 new college judges, and of those 20, the number of first-year judges had an average of 2 meets, and the number of second-year judges had an average of 2.9. In some cases, they had 6 or 7 because they happened to live where we really needed judges. And this computation includes Division 1, 2, and 3 meets, the invitationals, the conference meets. We assigned Division 3 nationals, and USAG nationals was added this year. It does not include the NCAA statistics. That's pretty much what we have in the PowerPoint, but a couple other random things. Debbie Yeoman normally prepares what Patty Vitale used to do, which is a rules summary sheet that is ready to be put up on NEWGJ. And the other thing I was going to mention that I didn't even tell Cookie I was going to do, I was cleaning last night and I came across this 40 and Fabulous. So I'm reminding you that next summer from July 13th to 15th, we will all be in Grand Rapids, Michigan for Gold and Glorious 50 years. The information for that, I found it all on NEWGJ.org. You can find it easily. You can make hotel reservations. We were there last summer for a meeting and it was a lovely site and lots of things to do around the area and lots of places to eat right close to the hotel.
There are, and we will have a college track.
And we will have a college track.
Just say what I've said before, but to thank all of the officials out there who work so hard and study hard and go to clinics and do all the work so they can, do the best job they can when they're on the floor. I know in the heat of the moment, sometimes some of us coaches get very passionate, as Cookie says. So, know that we're passionate about our jobs and about our athletes and about our sport. But deep down, we appreciate you guys and we know how hard you work. And we know that every single person goes out on the floor every time they're judging to do their best job. Nobody's out there purposefully trying to be mean. So we appreciate you guys, for lack of a better way to say it, I guess.
Thank you.
We do appreciate you, even though sometimes we don't act like it. We'll do better though.
But I just want you all to know that we are 100% behind all of you. We couldn't do any of our jobs, and our athletes wouldn't be where they are without all of you. And we so appreciate the time and effort that you put into, learning all the rules. We change them frequently, as you've noticed. And so we so appreciate all of the work that you all do. And please know that we are on your side. And I hope I speak for everybody in the coaching world that without you, we couldn't be where we are. So thank you.
I just want to ditto what Melanie and Jackie said. I think one of the things that I really stood out to me the most in this specific meeting was just all the pressure you guys have on TV. And so I certainly appreciate everything that you are doing. We couldn't do what we do without you. And so we're thankful for that. And
well, thanks to everyone. And those of you, if you have a question that didn't get answered, send them to Lois.
That's fine.
Okay. Thanks so much. Yeah. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to all of our judges. We, just like the coaches said, we really appreciate you and what you do. And I think particularly because we see more of the information that comes back in from the coaches in terms of the evaluations. And we really, truly appreciate what you do to help this sport keep getting better and better. And I tell you, it is getting better and better.